Welcome to the discussion. My guest today is John Ogren, the Chief Learning Officer of the National Weather Service, which is part of NOAA in the Department of Commerce. John, welcome to the discussion.
Thanks a lot, Jason. Glad to be here.
Now, John, we are coming to each other through Skype. This is very exciting. This is a first of a kind for a video teleconference. We're going to have a great conversation. And this is a timely conversation as well, as the Chief Learning Officer has really garnered a much larger place in the federal, I'll call it, pantheon of CXOs. Over the last few years, I think the realization is true that training, education of employees cannot be overlooked or pushed aside, especially when budgets tighten. And with the Trump administration's goal to reskill or upskill employees and apply automation, the CLO, I think, becomes even more important. So let's start with some basics. The National Weather Service, you guys are a big organization. Everyone depends on you. Most people don't realize they depend on you, but we all do. So talk a little bit about NWS and your role as the Chief Learning Officer.
Sure, absolutely, Jason. Yeah, the National Weather Service plays a critical role in saving lives and property, and that's really our mission is protection of life and property, and also enhancement of the national economy. So we're kind of small and mighty as federal agencies go. We're about 4,200 people strong. We've got our headquarters in Silver Spring, Maryland there, but we've also have our primary training facility out here in Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm at. But we serve 122 offices across the country. So one of the strengths of the National Weather Service and the federal government is we are where our customer are. That we serve emergency management, we serve all different federal agencies, and ultimately serve the public in trying to save them from severe storms and alerting them ahead of time. So we're trying to build a weather-ready nation, and we're doing that through partnerships with our emergency managers. And my role in that as the Chief Learning Officer is to make sure that our staff is prepared to do their jobs when it really matters most.
I love that, a weather-ready nation in many ways.
Weather-ready nation, yeah.
And here in the D.C. area, as you well know, it's all about traffic and it's all about weather, especially for our sister station WTOP. And if you've heard of that station, it's on the 8s, you know.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I used to live and work in the D.C. area, so very familiar.
So let's talk about your role a little bit. You said get the staff, ensure they're ready to help the rest of the nation. Let's talk about your strategy for training and development of the workforce.
Sure. Really, the whole strategy is to train the entire workforce. Weather Service has a rich history of training dating back well into the 50s and beyond. But what's really changed in the past several years is a real emphasis on training from the corporate level. Training had been, kind of buried in the organizational structure in the past. And about 5 years ago, when Dr. Uccellini came on board as the Assistant Administrator for Weather Services, he has a real passion for training. And as we were going through a headquarters reorganization, we really identified that we needed to take training and make it a corporate function of who we are and what we do. Sure, we train meteorologists and hydrologists and scientists and things like that, but we also have to make sure that our equipment is running optimally. So we are training electronics technicians and IT staff to make sure that the radars are working when we need them the most, when the networks are up when we need them the most. Also administrative staff, facility staff. If it's raining and the roof is leaking on our computer farms, that's a bad day and we can't meet our mission. So the real shift has been to take that training role and make it part of that C-suite, as you were talking about, as a Chief Learning Officer, so we can now oversee the entire organization and try to staff train everybody that's out there.
When you talk about the idea of a corporate function, that's a very, if you will, private sector view. Is that the type of approach you guys have taken? Is, okay, what's happening in the private sector? You're seeing some trends and saying, okay, now how can we apply them to what we do?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're certainly a governmental agency, and the Office of the Chief Learning Officer is part of that infrastructure. But we work with the Mazie Foundation. We work with a lot of external CLOs. I go to conferences and have networked with a lot of people over the years. And so we're really trying to modernize training. It's slow, it's tedious. Are we there yet? Not completely, but have we made a lot of strides? Absolutely. And it all goes down to the way we're funded as well. Certainly the National Weather Service gets their budgets, and we've got 6 different portfolios in how we get our money. But what's different is that I don't really necessarily get a base budget. I work with the different portfolios within the Weather Service headquarters to fund that. The real benefit is they've got skin in the game. So if we have a new piece of technology, like a new satellite that was just launched, if we've got decision support services and things like that, and we're doing a nationwide rollout of something new, they've got skin in the game. They know that they have training needs, and then they carve out a certain portion of their budget to help fund that training. And the results have been incredible. The training budgets, as a result, have gone up because I just don't manage a budget. I've got a lot of partners and I've got a lot of stakeholders, if you will, within the Weather Service that help fund the training.
That's a very interesting approach for many reasons. Number one, it makes your role less of the person who says, we will do this training, to almost the person who has to convince and encourage, and you play cheerleader to a certain extent to be like, well, this is why it's important, and you have to get them on board. What does that mean for you as the CLO?
Oh, that's a lot of my job, is to work with the field offices, those 122 forecast offices, and all the national centers, from the National Hurricane Center to Storm Prediction Center and beyond, you know, to find out what their real training needs are as we're going forward into new fiscal years, and then to work with those senior leaders within the budget portfolios to really fight for and get the resources we need to train the workforce.
You talked about training has gone up, at least the budgeting of that. Can you point to a reason why, or have you seen kind of a trend of why it's gone up, meaning that there's been an understanding of value, or is it somebody pressing from the top?
It's a little bit of everything. Certainly pressing from the top. As I mentioned earlier, Dr. Uccellini is a huge proponent of training and very supportive, so it certainly helps to have that support from the top. But the demand from the field offices as well, as we become more highly technical, the more new things that get rolled out. We're also an aging workforce, so we have a lot of new employees that are coming in. So it's really a big part of our succession planning, is that, how do we develop the leaders of the future? How do we develop the new hires that are coming in to help meet the mission as well? So it's multi-tiered, but we really bottomed out in training, and it was an external force. As we went through the sequester years several years ago, our budget from 2000, which was the end of our modernization, through about 2009, 2010, was kind of flatlined as non-labor, about $5 million, which you can do some stuff with, but and we were maintaining. But when the sequester hit, our non-labor budget literally dropped to $825,000. And we came to a screeching halt as far as training was going at that point. Was also coincident with the reorganization of our headquarters and taking training and moving it up into the corporate ladder a little bit. I report to the Deputy Director of the Weather Service, so that gives me a lot of visibility as far as the rest of the organization, but it also gives me the support we need to help go out there. So as a result, the budgets are now non-labor about 8 to 9 million. So we've really made a significant improvement. Have we trained everything that we want to train? Absolutely not. I don't think we'll ever get to that point, but we are in a lot better shape today than we were about 7 or 8 years ago.
That's a fascinating and unfortunate picture of a drop at 5 million to about 825,000. It's great to hear you guys are back up to 8 or 9 million. Do you feel like you've caught up from the post sequester world, or are you still kind of up on that curve on the top, moving up to the top end of the curve?
Yeah, we're really getting there. We're back as far as we're able to do the things that we were able to do prior to the sequester. And then, as I mentioned, the Weather Ready Nation, we've got a lot of new initiatives that are going on across the National Weather Service. So the shift from it's not good enough just to put out the forecast and warning, we need to be able to communicate that better to our core partners, the emergency managers, so they can make smart decisions. And so we're doing a lot of training on that. So not only are you a scientist, you're now becoming a communicator, so our partners can make smart decisions and save lives. We've got a lot of new technology that's coming down. We just had a launch earlier this week of COSMIC, which is going to give us whole new data sets. The GOES-R series for satellites, new polar satellites that are out there, new convective allowing models. So there's a lot of new things going on that we need to train on. And so, the training demand's not going to go away anytime soon.
And I think the other piece of this, and I think you brought this up, is around the workforce. When you talk about an aging workforce, I know National Weather Service, like several agencies around the government, people stay there. People love their job. It's almost the pinnacle of their job. Hey, I want to be a meteorologist. Boom, I have my job at the National Weather Service. I'm not leaving. So do you have this, if you will, the bathtub effect that we hear often, where you have a lot of kind of early career people and then a lot of later career people, where that middle is bottomed out a little bit?
Yeah, I haven't graphed it out. What I do know is roughly a third of our workforce can retire within the next 5 years, and so that doesn't mean they will leave, right? And everybody retires when they want to retire, but we definitely know that there's going to be a bubble. I'm a meteorologist too. I have that affliction. Many of the people that work for the National Weather Service, especially the meteorologists, are doing it because they've had a love for weather from a very early age. I know, I had a big weather event in my life when I was 4 or 5 years old, and scared the bejeebers out of me. But later in life, helped me figure out how weather ticks, and I had no other career goal other than to be a meteorologist with the Weather Service. And so a lot of our workforce is in that same boat, and it's great to get paid for your passion. So how's that tie into training? It's a love as well. So even our instructors that are here in Kansas City and Norman and Boulder, Colorado. They're all in it to help each other, to where, again, we can meet the mission better.
And I imagine the fact that you've done the job before helps you with that training, with coming up with the curriculum, understanding like what maybe some of the younger people, if you will, are going through, or some of the people at the newer part of their careers. At the same time, you probably also understand what more advanced people need in terms of training. So you're kind of at that perfect spot in some ways.
Yeah, and that's something that is kind of unique to the Chief Learning Officer position, is that we all come from different paths. Some are traditional trainers and maybe have a degree in instructional design or something like that. But as I network, the Chief Learning Officers come from all walks of life. And so, yeah, I do feel like I have a really good understanding of the organization. I started off as a GS5 intern in Jackson, Kentucky, and have kind of worked my way up throughout my career. I've worked both in the field at Weather Service headquarters as well as a regional office. So it gives me a good viewpoint of what's going on out there and what their needs are. More than that, it really helped build a network. So I know everybody out there, and so I can work with them to find out what the needs of the field are, so we can try to meet those needs.
All right, there's plenty to talk about, but let's take a quick break. My guest is John Ogren, the Chief Learning Officer of the National Weather Service, which is a part of NOAA in the Department of Commerce. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to the discussion, Providing a Modern Learning Experience, sponsored by Cornerstone On Demand on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network.